Hello, and thanks for joining us for a special edition of Chicago Tonight. I'm Amanda Vinicky. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. Tonight is the latest in our series, WTTW News, A Safer City. We're devoting our entire program to the issues of public and community safety. We'll also be prioritizing public safety in our online coverage at WTTW.com/safercity. On tonight's program, we explore the intersection of violence and youth.
Social media and music, they really make it seem like guns are like, oh, shoot, like I got a gun, like that's so cool.
We talk with teens about what it's like growing up in Chicago and how they're working to change the narrative around gun violence. Plus, community leaders share how they're working to empower young people. We kick off those conversations next.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jin and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors. Chicago Tonight's coverage of public safety is supported by the Su Ling Jin Charitable Foundation Initiative for Reducing Violence in Chicago.
From violence intervention and prevention programs to college and career services, community organizations across Chicago are working with the city's youth to help stop violence. Joining us now are leaders from some of those organizations, and they are Krista Hamilton, President and CEO of UCAN, Bradley Johnson, Chief Community Officer at Build Chicago, and Samuel Castro, Director of Community Violence Intervention at the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago. Thanks to each of you for joining me. Now, Krista, I actually want to start with you because this is not anything new, working with youth. In fact, UCAN goes back to the Civil War era, am I correct?
Yes. We just had our 155th birthday last month.
Happy birthday.
Yes.
But what do you have in common with what was going on in the time of the Civil War? How is this a continued thread?
So our organization was started as an orphanage for kids that were disconnected from their families during the Civil War. And 155 years later, we're still doing that work. So a big part of our portfolio is working with the Department of Children and Family Services. We do foster care programs, residential programs, and transitional living programs. But from that, we've spun out to all these other supportive services. So our workforce development, our violence prevention, our youth development programs, all creates an ecosystem and what we call a continuum of care. So it starts with those kids that are in the care of the state of Illinois, but it has grown into so much more through the years.
And that continuum of care, I'm assuming, is very important in terms of getting to the heart of prevention.
Getting to the heart of prevention, yes. So we do some intervention and prevention work.
Now, Sam, let's turn to you. The Institute for Nonviolence Chicago follows a really specific approach when it comes to trying to tackle violence. This is Keynesian. What does that mean?
So normally people will try to figure out what are the best steps. So we use the 6 steps and principles and figuring out as you're gathering information, share information. We go through that process, and if at the end, if we're able to create some type of non-aggression, we celebrate, right? Because often we don't celebrate those wins. And if that didn't work, then we go back to step 1, just thinking about what pieces did we miss as we were putting the puzzle together.
Celebrating success, so important. And the Keynesian approach that comes from Martin Luther King Jr.?
Yes.
Okay, so nonviolence there. Now, Bradley, your organization provides resources to children and young adults from ages 6 to 24. But let's start with 6-year-olds. I mean, that's kindergarten. Why is it important to engage youth at such a young age, and how do you do it?
Well, you know, I think that's historically built, first of all, means broader urban involvement in leadership development. And learning from working with young people, where we started in 1969, young people who are on the streets, gang involved. So these were young adults and older teens. But what we learned was they didn't start there, and that you had to start to reach them earlier. You had to connect with them sooner before they, went down a path. And so we work in a lot of schools. So in elementary schools, working with our kids, working with families, making sure that our kids have access and exposure to opportunity. Because when you talk about violence prevention, really violence is nothing more than a symptom of a lack of access to opportunity, a lack of exposure, and the ability to make good decisions, but you have to have options to do that. And so from younger ages, getting those ideas in their heads and exposure.
I'm assuming with young kids especially, a lot is based on your friend circles and what your peers are up to. So is that part of it as well?
It's part of it, but it's also your family. It's also who influences you. And so there's that transitional age between 6 and like 9 years old, where young people start to think for themselves. And so the sooner that you can reach them to implant or to impart some knowledge or some ideas or some thoughts inside of them, because they're going to get it one way or the other. And so it does come through peers, but it's also that interaction, also that exposure, also that structure, and also that care and that love that there's necessary that they build upon.
Krista, I hear you sort of nodding, saying yes to that young age component.
Absolutely. So something we're really excited about at UCAN, we are launching this summer a program called Reach 21, which means relentlessly engaging adolescents to choose hope. And it's specifically for young boys. And it's going to start at as early as 12 years old up until 21 years old. And we're looking to engage them from 12 to 21, and we're going to celebrate them. They hit those milestones at 16 years old, 18 years old, and 21 years old. And we're hoping that we're going to either end at 21 with a job in school or some type of vocational program or trade school. So we're really excited about launching this program. We're going to take a small cohort of 25, and we're going to see how far we can go with them.
And again, this notion of celebrating successes and,
Yes.
and wins. Now, Sam, in order to reach students in schools, you have to get in the school. And I understand that that sometimes is presented a challenge.
Yeah, unfortunately, because of a lot of the staff that works violence prevention, we have the lived experience, so we can't get there. So we're trying to figure out a way to do the work there, and we don't want the CPS to look at us as crossing guard, because there's some intentional work that has to happen. So what we do is we work around the system. There's people who have lived experience but never been incarcerated, so we sit down and talk about a plan to get into the school, because as my partners share, there's no age limit to this. They're starting at a younger age, wanting to jump out the porch, so we're being intentional to get them and give them different choices and being that option for them.
And having that sort of experience, I presume, makes it a far more relatable relationship, that a youth is going to listen to somebody.
Yeah,
been there.
definitely that, because they look like me. I was once them. It's relatable versus a person who read it out the book. Nothing wrong with that. But when they can relate to you, and one thing about the youth and kids, they smell when a person is genuine and about coming to help them.
Kids know.
In our work, we call it credible messengers. Yep. These are messengers that are credible. They have kind of the street credibility in the community, but they've also made decisions to be an asset to their communities now.
I want to get to you, Bradley, as well. So it's my understanding you are in Austin, but also returning to Humboldt Park. I'm curious, are there differences in how you approach programming or relationships in two different communities?
Well, I think the core of what we do is based on the people we serve. So in Humboldt Park is actually where we originated. We never really left Humboldt Park. We moved our headquarters to Austin, but we continue providing services in Humboldt Park community. Now, the difference is as every single school we're in is different. I don't care what neighborhood you're in, there's a different culture and environment inside of a school. It's based on administration, it's based on those blocks encircling it. And so our approach, honestly, is the same. The same is connection with the community, connection with the families, connection with the schools, and then we work from there. Now, what
sort of adapt within it.
You adapt within it, but that approach is the same. Now, you have to do something different because it's a different culture. And so understanding that is important. But I would say that largely it's all about really providing what's needed or desired by the community. We don't prescribe it. We don't come with a cookie cutter kind of approach. It's more or less, here's what this school is looking for and need. Here's what this block needs. Sometimes there is gang involvement, but gangs are different. That's one of the differences too. From the African American community to the Latinx or Hispanic community, sometimes the cultures are a little different when it comes to gangs and things like that. And so the approach has to be different. But also, you can't apply 20th century approaches to 21st century communities now. Things are different now. And so our approach is always going to adapt.
What does that look like in an adapting age? I mean, are we talking getting on TikTok, or what are we talking about?
We are. So we have teams that scrub the internet. They're looking for rival gang issues, and we're going out to those individuals. You know, if people are maybe mocking someone or making a post, we're going to those kids and we're saying, hey, you know, how do we mitigate this from happening? We're doing peace circles and restorative conversations. We actually have what's called no slide agreements. When we go to two rival, we'll call them gangs, and we have them agree that they won't go on each other's blocks, and they sign off on it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. You know, I want to get to something that has gotten a lot of attention is this mass shooting in the back of the yards. And Sam, your community works there. What was your organization's response to this incident where a 9-year-old was left dead?
From the moment we received the email and CPIC call from the district, everyone was hands-on. Not only our staff that worked back of the yard, but our staff that were on call in West Garfield and also Austin was on it. And I'm also grateful and humble that I have partners throughout the city that came. My phone was ringing. They're like, what
people
can we
were ready
do?
at all
People
hours.
were ready because they know violence strikes. It doesn't matter what part of your city it's at. And when I seen it, of course, people automatically think it's a gang thing, but unfortunately, it was just people that were celebrating life and this happened. But I think people say like, what? And I'm like, my response is, we're now walking the family to help heal through their traumatic experiences. And the love thing about being in a partnership, everybody came, right? So I figure if there was 11 people who was affected, if one person loves one, that means I got 22 people. And I think about the kids. So when we put that together, it was a blessing to be in a collaborative effort.
Well, thank you so much for your work to each of you. We're going to end it there. And once again, that is Krista Hamilton, Samuel Castro, and Bradley Johnson. We appreciate each of you. And now, a local organization is working to educate teens on the risks of carrying a gun. Joanna Hernandez spent time with the group's leaders and participants and joins us now live from downtown. Joanna.
Amanda, nowadays we can spend hours on our phones scrolling through social media. That's how the organization Project Unloaded is working to make an impact. Here at Gallery 37, a group of teens are working to educate others on the risks of carrying a gun by becoming social influencers for change.
I feel like it's easier to get a gun than it is to do a lot of things. Like, it's easier to get a gun than it is to rent in Chicago.
15-year-old Leah McLean is one of the many students participating in a program at After School Matters in downtown Chicago. Olivia Brown is leading the initiative.
We are working with teens at After School Matters to train them to become marketing professionals and use social media to empower their teens. Click the link in my bio to learn more about.
Brown is part of a larger effort called Project Unloaded, an organization driven to create a new cultural narrative about guns.
A lot of our students have come to us really heartbroken and they're grieving and they, are wanting more. And I think being able to give them some tools for how to start those conversations with people that they love and care about and want to see succeed.
High school freshman Alexis Jackson says that's why she wanted to join the program.
I envision myself, with Project Unloaded, us making like promotions and stuff like that and helping people like try to convince them that having a gun on them is not okay and there are other ways to make yourself feel safe without like carrying a gun on you.
Their approach is simple. They believe guns make us less safe, a message founder Nina Vinnick has spent more than a decade advocating for.
Most people, including most young people, have bought into the myth that having a gun is going to make them safer. But it is a myth. Homes with guns have higher rates of suicide and homicide. You're at greater risk of dying by gun violence if you have a gun at home. And communities with more guns have more gun violence, not less.
The organization hopes to reach young people digitally by building social media campaigns to spark action among communities impacted by gun violence. Their most recent campaign, Guns Change the Story, is one of them.
So the idea behind Guns Change the Story is to help teens understand how everyday moments in their lives can really change in an instant when a gun enters the picture.
When I was going outside of my school with a group of students for us during the recess, I guess, someone was shot right in front of us.
19-year-old Edgar Velches has been with the organization for a year.
Growing up in Belmont Cragen, it was, always turning on certain news networks and hearing the headlines, youth got shot, a gun happened this, or from personal experience seeing a gun shooting outside my school. And I knew that it was nothing that should be normalized.
Now in his first year of college, Velches says his passion for gun violence prevention has grown thanks to this program.
It was a new way to target an issue and start a movement of young leaders. So I decided to apply, and I'm here, part of the Project Unloaded National Youth Council.
Don't let a gun change your story. Project Unloaded is building a community of teens determined to change gun culture and make our future safer.
Instructor Olivia Brown says she started organizing at 14 years old. Through her lived experiences, she educates students and guides them to be the change they want to see in their communities.
As they learn more of the facts, you see this shift from, I don't feel like I can do anything, or I don't know if my voice matters, to wait, it actually does. And if I am courageous enough to use my voice, then good things can happen. So that's been really fun to see.
And the organization says it has reached close to 150,000 teens across Chicago through their social media campaigns on Instagram and Snapchat. Reporting from downtown Chicago, I'm Joanna Hernandez. I send it back to you.
Social media everywhere. Thank you, Joanna. Now, the average age for Chicagoans to witness a shooting is 14 years old. That's according to a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association. We're going to turn to several young people who live in different areas of the city to hear their firsthand experiences about how violence and safety concerns impact their daily lives. Joining us are Erica Smith, a member of the Youth Leadership Council at After School Matters, Jonathan Morales, who is participating in the MICFA Challenge. That's a program teaching high schoolers how to be engaged in the political system so they can be informed citizens and leaders. And Devarius Jones, a youth leader with Communities United and its Voices of Youth in Chicago Education Initiative. Thanks to each of you for being here. Now, Devarius, let's start with you. I'm going to cite another study here, and this comes from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services that said getting shot is the leading cause of death for Black youth. Is this something that you, maybe not the stats, but that reality that you and your friends are aware of, and your friends in Austin?
Yes. Every day when we go outside together, we always have to be extra cautious to be aware of our surroundings, so, to make sure we don't have to worry about that. So we are aware of it. We just try not to think about it as much.
But you have to think about it at the same time, so it's sort of a tug there, I'm guessing?
Yeah, gotta be more cautious.
Erica, is that something that resonates with you?
Yes, I actually have a couple of friends that have just recently passed away due to gun violence, and one of their funerals are tomorrow, and it's just like really bad knowing that you have to go outside every 5 minutes and turn behind you and be like on edge everywhere you go.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. How are you coping?
Just day by day, because like everybody keeps dying. So it's like at a certain point you get to like, it's just like, I don't know.
Does it feel like you sort of have to turn yourself off and wall yourself away from it, or?
Kinda. I have to kind of like turn my feelings off, because like, you know, a person can only take so much. So after losing so many people, it becomes like something that's just like, dang.
Yeah.
But certain people hit closer.
Yeah, I'm sure. You know, that's a pretty stressful thing to live with at such a young age. How do you cope with that, Devarius?
I just try to read, keep at work, to like keep my mind focused off of it. Try to stay out the way.
Focus on schoolwork, or do you have a job?
Yeah, I work for Communities United. I try to stay focused with them. They help me through a lot. Also, like my supervisor is like my mentor, so I really do connect with him.
you run by a scary situation or a struggle or?
Yeah, at my job, we always could talk to each other. Like, it's very welcome, open space. So I really enjoy that. So I could come to them about anything.
That's awesome. Now, Jonathan, I'm not trying to ignore you at all. Tell us about where you live, and does any of this hit home?
I live more like in the south side, so like an area called Chicagoland. And honestly, like the area, I would say it's safe, but it's also, it has, of course, its own cons. And of course, there's gang violence. There's always going to be gang violence somewhere. So, of course I'm going to be cautious wherever I'm walking.
What does that look like? Just being aware of your surroundings, keeping your phone hidden? What does that mean?
Honestly, like to me personally, I've lived there my whole life. So I think I'm kind of just used to like just walking, not worrying about much. But yeah, recently it's getting like worse. So of course you got to be like cautious because you don't know if it will turn out to be you someday.
You feel like it's getting worse?
Yeah, I do.
That said, are there stereotypes about your area at all that you think people get wrong?
Honestly, not really. I feel like the area I live in, it doesn't get talked as much. So I don't think there's much stereotypical things being said. But yeah, of course, like I don't know. I feel like in a way I'm just like gotta be cautious. There's gang violence in the area, so of course it's gonna be some type of shooting back to back to one another. So of course you just got to be cautious in a way. You got to keep your surroundings on cautious and just keep moving on with your day-to-day life.
Have you had a conversation with any of your peers or friends perhaps about why using a gun is not the right choice, or conversations about guns in general?
We've had conversations about guns where the field, like we've talked about, such as like soapbox speeches, that kind of.
Oh yeah, what is that?
Soapbox speeches. Soapbox speeches are kind of just like speeches about things about youth, like what they care about the most, like problems in their communities that they care about the most. So it could be like public housing, gang violence, community violence, just sort of things like that. So in those speeches, you kind of hear much about like guns and what you should do to maybe try to find a solution to bring down like the gun rate. And we've talked about gun rate.
Erica, I'm sorry, you're clearly going through some really hard times, and yet something cool happened recently. You did get to visit the White House for a youth policy summit. Did you talk with anybody in Washington about what you've experienced, and do you think that they heard you?
Yeah, I've actually had like a couple of conversations with a lot of great people, like people within the criminal justice system. Miss Chattel, I forgot her position, and I've also talked to Secretary Cardona, head of education. So I've talked to
some high-profile people that can make a difference. What did they tell you?
I definitely tried to like advocate as much as I could for not just the Black community, but the minority community as a whole, because I feel like our school systems are very like poorly balanced out, should I say, because I've experienced both. I used to live in the Oak Park area, so I went to
a school that was really well resourced, you're saying, versus now where you feel it and see a difference?
Yeah, because I came from up north from a school, and then I went out south to CICS Longwood, and I went from scoring in the 100th percentile to scoring in the 60th percentile due to everything that was going on, and just like
the mental health stress, beyond just education and teaching, it's the mental health stress, something that I understand was part of this White House summit. I want to go to you, Devarius, in terms of where you spend your waking hours at schools. Do you feel safe at school?
Sometimes. Like my school, it's not the most compassionate and with safety and special like that, but they do offer some programs that help with that to try to make it better. And my program, Community United, my organization, we do peace circles there every Wednesday. We try to engage them to like help make sure we could do better and change and do a little change in the community.
And Jonathan, how about you? What do you want your school safety's approach to look like?
Honestly, I'm not really too sure on that. But what I can say is like, my school is honestly, it's I can say maybe like somewhat, maybe not the best, but it's at least somewhat type of safe. Of course, you know, there's a lot of fights. There's like fights. There's just a lot of violence.
How do you
in
navigate
general.
that? Just try and stay away?
Yeah, they kind of just like escort us to go a different route, or just try to move out of the way. But of course, you know, some people don't listen, so they just want to look at the fight just to see like what's going on and all of that. So yeah, that's what they kind of do. If there's a fight, they kind of navigate you through a different route at my school.
Well, thank you for each of you for sharing your stories. I will look forward to hearing what you do. You're going to accomplish a lot. I have good feelings. And again, Erica, I'm so sorry for your losses. That is our show for this Tuesday night. Join us tomorrow at 5:30 and at 10 for Chicago Tonight, Black Voices. What is behind leadership changes at a historic civil rights organization? And the Bears are expected to unveil plans for a new domed lakefront stadium ahead of the NFL draft. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Amanda Vinicky. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that is proud to recognize its 18 attorneys selected for the 2024 Super Lawyers List.